Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Brands Hatch in Kent in the United Kingdom for coverage of the qualifying session ahead of the second round of the Blancpain GT Sprint Series of 2014. My name is Jack Nichols. Alongside me here in the commentary box is John Watson. John, it's been beautiful weather. It's very hot in this commentary box and a perfect situation, a perfect venue for GT racing here.
Jack, I thought you were going to say legend John Watson. The reality is the legend is this wonderful Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit, 2.4 miles. We see track temperature 25.7 Celsius, 21.8 ambient temperature. It's been a beautiful day. It's been slightly overcast, so humidity is on the higher side, but what a great racetrack we are at. Some of the views of the sights, I mean, this takes your breath away. Looking from Dingledell Corner, which is now called Sheen Curve, through the dip at Dingledell, back up to Westfield Bend. If you walk this part of the racetrack, you'd think you're in the middle of Kent. It's just an amazing piece of motor racing history in Great Britain.
Absolutely, and we're here, as you can see, on the circuit, which is on the full Grand Prix circuit with its 9 corners and 4 kilometers in length. It's really going to be an entertaining qualifying session, because just watching the cars on this track is entertainment enough for me.
Yes, and what we're going to see is, remember, Brands Hatch's old school Grand Prix style racetrack. Most of the drivers who are going to take part in qualifying have not been to Brands Hatch. Some have driven on the Indy circuit, but that's a walk in the park, because once you leave Surtees Corner and head out towards Hawthorne itself, the Hawthorne Bend, it's a different world. Big corners, big commitment, high speed, challenge to everybody, and of course marginal errors for mistakes. So if you run wide, you're going to be in the gravel trap, and if you're lucky, you'll avoid the barriers at the back of the gravel trap.
So there were briefly some of the standings, but it's actually Max Buch and Max Goetz who are leading the sprint standings at the moment after their win in the opening race of the season in Nogaro in France a couple of weeks ago. And well, there you can see even watching the racing here is a joy. And there's
but the danger for that lovely couple is hay fever.
Even my favourite place here is the inside of Druids. Watching cars coming up at the inside of Druids is just phenomenal. But the cars then that we have here this weekend, we were due to have 20 cars taken to the track, but unfortunately the Porsche that was entered, the very exciting looking Porsche of Farnbacher with Philip Frommenweiler and Britishman Nick Tandy at the wheel, won't be competing in the rest of the weekend, John.
I mean, my heart has been broken, because first time this year we're going to see a Porsche in Blancpain Sprint, and it didn't get very far, because on the exit of Stirling's Bend, corner I'm rather familiar with, the car got a little bit out of shape, hit the barriers on the left-hand side of the track, and sadly sustained sufficient damage that they were unable to repair the car. Now, of course, Porsche, the water-cooled versions, that is, have got their water radiators on the outside of the wings on both front left, front right, but clearly more damage than just simply the damage to the radiators, and that's one car down. It just goes to show that this is unforgiving. If you make a mistake, you will pay a penalty, and for the Porsche team, Farnbacher Racing, I'm very disappointed.
So we can hear the engines starting to fire up now in the pit lane, because we've got 40 seconds until we go green. The way it will work is that it'll be split into 3 segments. So we'll have a 15-minute segment for for one pair of the drivers. We'll then have a 15-minute segment for the second driver, and then the top 10 from those two will go through to the final pole position shootout, which will include 10 cars with their pre-designated driver of choice to start the final pole position shootout, and then it's as many laps as you want just to get that pole position time done. The last few seasons we've had 1-by-1 qualification runs, but now it's just a 10-minute, everyone on track, see what you can do. So the first car that's making its way to the exit of the pit lane is the GRT Lamborghini of Stefan Landman and Sasha Halleck. Stefan Landman making his Blancpain GT Series debut as well here this weekend at Brands Hatch as we go green, and the qualification session is underway. You can hear the Lamborghini roaring as it makes its way out of the pit lane. It's closely followed by the second Lamborghini, which is another new entry for the weekend, the 88 Reiter Engineering Lamborghini. Thomas Enger and Stefan Rosina together, so the Czech Republic and Slovakia reuniting at the wheel of the Lamborghini, and that's something that Thomas Enger is very excited about, and both very quick drivers.
Yeah, it's a competitive car. Thomas Enger, always competitive. Stefan Rosina, who said at the back end of last year in Slovakia, this is my last year of racing driving. I'm going into business. Well, he didn't last very long in business because he's back as a professional driver and an able partner for Thomas Enger. And just clicking down to see what we got in the free practice sessions. We've had 2 so far here at Brands Hatch on Saturday. Quickest of all, not surprisingly, maybe to some, was Belgian Audi Club Audi, Laurens van Voor, Cesar Ramos, 1 minute 24.918. That is mighty quick for a GT car around Brands Hatch. 2.4 miles, 3.9 kilometers. So it's going to be interesting. I think we're going to see very, very exciting images, especially where the car sort of explodes into view from some of the raises and dips on this racetrack.
Absolutely, and that also gives us a good benchmark, that 1 minute 24.918, of the sort of times we can expect. I imagine pole position will end up being somewhere in the mid-24s perhaps. That gives us a decent gauge, although we are getting later on in the day. As you can see, plenty of the cars still waiting in the pit lane, just taking their time before heading out onto the circuit. But there then is the number 27 car, which is being run in this session by Stefan Landmann, a newcomer to the series, the 27-year-old Austrian, making it an all-Austrian, well, 3 out of 4 Austrian drivers at Gottfried Grasser's team, the exception being the Dutchman Jeroen Bleekemolen, who put it on pole in Nogaro. So these are another team that are definitely one to watch out for. Stefan Landmann, with a reasonable amount of experience, racing the Clio Cup in Germany, the Mini Challenge in Germany as well, before moving on to GTs in 2011. And it's good to see him out here as he comes into the left-hander at Surtees. Now, this is one of my favourite camera angles on the circuit. They come whizzing towards you out of Surtees.
Yeah, I mean, Surtees is one of those challenging corners. It's the first corner you have to approach before you go out onto the long straight, the dip before you go into Hawthorne Bend. And again, seeing it on camera does not give you a true illustration of just how camber that corner is. It's a corner that you can carry a great deal of speed into, more than if that was a totally flat corner. Then you're through Westfield before you know it, Dingle dip, up the hill, Sheen curve. Easy to make a mistake because that apex is blind on the approach to it. Into Stirling's Bend, not the quickest of corners at Brands, but one that does penalise you if you get it wrong. It was just on the exit, on the left, that's where the Porsche had its accident.
So through the final corner then comes Stefan Landmann. We're not really expecting this Lamborghini to get through into the top 10. If they do, it'll be a magnificent result. He's going to come across the line to set the first representative lap time of the session, a 1 minute 26.663. So not really at all on the pace, but it's a first lap out of the box, so not to be too surprised at that. But here then is a man with a lot of history at this race circuit, Alex Zanardi, coming into the final corner, and he's about to get blocked, I think, a little bit. He has to go all the way around the outside.
Yeah, I mean, that's just unacceptable. I mean, Zanardi on a flying lap, albeit his first flying lap, totally compromised in clearways. That then leads into Clark Curve, and that cost him. They did lose maybe half a second or so. Gone second quickest. No, he's actually lost a second and a half on that. So that was a disappointment for Alex Zanardi. Remember, driving this BMW Z3M with controls on the steering wheel, not just turning the car, but throttle is actuated by a ring behind the steering wheel, pulls it back. And I mean, so much work required here at Brands Hatch, and Alex Zanardi will be working overtime.
And 2 years ago, he picked up 2 Paralympic gold medals here in hand cycling, and this is the first time he's returned since then in something a little more powerful, this BMW Z4, a car that he's really enjoying driving, because he made his return to racing after his terrible accident a few years ago in the World Touring Car Championship. But he's saying, you know, that was fun and everything and a real challenge, but it's great now to be back inside a proper race car.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is a proper race car. And just to cap all that, Alex Zanardi was appointed a brand ambassador for BMW earlier this week.
And well, he's been very busy, because in fact only last week he won 2 golds and a silver in the road race and time trial at the UCI Paracycling World Cup at Castiglione della Pescaia. So he's still keeping up with the hand cycling as he trains for Rio 2016. So frankly, an incredible man, and what a brilliant story it would be if he could have a good weekend here. Across the line he comes to do a 1 minute 25.6, which sends him quickest so far, and is not too bad a lap time, really. That is similar to the sort of times he managed. It's almost identical actually to the time he managed in the second free practice session earlier on today. So it's Zanardi who's at the top of the times at the moment, but we're yet to see the sort of real big hitters. But everyone now is out of the pits and on the circuit.
Brazilian BMW.
And that's in the hands of Sergio Jimenez. They had a good run in Nogaro. They were running third until the real closing stages, maybe the last 3 or 4 laps.
They just sort of got swamped basically at the back end of the race in Nogaro. But again, I mean, I know I keep referring to it, but the Brazilian drivers do like warm weather, warm and maybe humid, and what they've got now are just about ideal track conditions. Track temperatures high, ambience good, and hopefully they're going to have a good run on this lap.
So 8 minutes and 50 seconds remaining. Stefan Landmann's just done the fastest first sector of anyone out there, but we've only had representative lap times from 5 cars so far, so expect everything to start to mix up at the top of the timing screens. Across the line come our championship leaders I just saw out of the window, but they are going on to their first flying lap as Sergio Jimenez turns through Surtees, then out onto the back straight through Pilgrim's Drop. He's flashing his lights to one of the slower cars in front to say, move out the way. Boom, there we go. I think that was past one of the Phoenix Audis as we go on board with him up now to Hawthorne Bend. Is that the most mega corner on the circuit?
No, it's a great corner. It's the quickest corner. I mean, Paddock Hill Bend is traditionally considered to be the big corner at Brands Hatch. There are many big corners. The one I always enjoyed was Clearways at the end of the lap. Very important to get a good entry, because the drive out of Clearways then into what they call now Clark Curve would dictate how quickly you would finish your lap. Stirling's Bend, that's the left-hander. It's a slowish corner, again quite heavily cambered. Important just to get a good slingshot down here into Clearways. The track then just falls away. This is the Clark Curve, the bit that brings you on to what we call the straight at Brands Hatch. In fact, it is one long curve and goes into 5th place. Sergio Jimenez in 5th.
There is a newcomer to Blancpain GT this weekend, Valdeno Brito. He's filling in for Nelson Piquet Jr., who's racing elsewhere in the world, but Brito himself is a very accomplished driver, 2 times Brazilian GT champion in 2010 and 2011, alongside Matheus Stumpf, who he's racing with this weekend, and he's also the man currently leading the V8 Brazilian Stock Car Championship. So a really impressive lineup from BMW Team Brazil. In fact, 3 of their 4 drivers are in the top 4 places in the V8 supercars, in the Brazilian V8s at the moment. As his teammate Stumpf then jumps up, and that's a problem. I think that's Arman Ibrahim, who was spun on the exit of Clark and Clearways, but he's got the Fortec car going once again. Unfortunately, only one Fortec car here this weekend.
Yes, indeed, and there's Arman Ibrahim who damaged the other car so badly, in fact, that car has had to have a brand new tub, and where he spun off was that Clark Curve, Clearways, able to get it back into the pits, but goodness knows, certainly if he hasn't damaged the car, there may be damage to the tyres. He may have flat spotted the tyres. Not been an easy, and he's also actually carrying an injury. His shoulder was damaged in that incident in Nogaro. It's still not 100% healed. They believe it's good enough for him to be able to compete competitively. He may just suffer a bit of pain.
There in the pits is the number 3 G-Drive Audi, Roman Rusinov, making his Blancpain GT Sprint Series debut this weekend. He was replaced by Gregory Gilbert in Nogaro, but Roman Rusinov is with us this weekend alongside Stefan Ortelli. But here into the final corner is a man on a mission, Maximilian Buch, best of anyone in Sector 1, personal best in Sector 2. Are we about to see Buch jump to the top of the timing screens? Across the line he comes. Can he get into the 24s? Yes, he can. 1 minute 24.729. That sends him quickest, but only fractionally quicker than Sergio Jimenez, who's there in 2nd place. So my pole prediction of mid-24s may have to come down a little bit. We could be looking at low 24s by the end of the sessions. I
think by the end of the session, again, it will depend on how teams want to use the tyres that they've got, the Pirelli tyre. So a strong run from Maximilian Buch, who's really at 21 years old. Very impressive indeed.
Another impressive youngster is Vincent Abril as he comes across the line now in the number 4 WRT Audi, only 19 years old. But he and Matheus Lisowski were, and there is Matheus Lisowski, were really strong in Nogaro.
Very much so. I mean, I think they were, to me, the pairing, the drive of the race, because inexperienced youth, but they used their heads, they didn't make mistakes, and they capitalized as well as running strongly, finishing the 4th place overall. And of course, the winner of the particular trophy that they're racing with.
Across the line comes Sergio Jimenez. Can he improve and take top spot? Yes, he can. 1 minute 24.575 for Jimenez. So the BMW Team Brazil squad looking really, really strong this weekend. It will be great to see them laps on the podium. We haven't seen that yet so far in their appearances in the Sprint Series.
Well, I think that one of the virtues of the BMW is what we would consider to be a high-ish downforce car, and therefore at Brands Hatch you're not looking for out-and-out straight line speed, you're looking for corner speed and speed into a corner, and that's what the BMW has got, and that's what we're seeing Sergio Jimenez display, currently quickest by just over a 0.15 of a second.
Steph Dusseldorf comes across the line. There he goes to 6th place, a 1 minute 25.589, so he doesn't improve actually that time around. This man may well do though. Cesar Ramos, he started on pole position for the main race in Nogaro, but got bumped up the rear by Nicky Meyer-Melnoff on the formation lap. A real frustration for him and Vanthor. He hasn't gone that strongly in the middle sector actually, but this will be a decent time from Ramos, currently in 11th place. Should move him up a little bit. Let's see where it puts him up into 8th, but 2nd and 3rd sector weren't quite with it.
Runs a little bit wide on the exit coming through Paddock Hill Bend, and we'll gather it all up. At Brands Hatch there are on the outside of some of the corners magnetic strips. You may see white lines running horizontal to the racetrack. They're there because in British GT or other forms of British motorsport, they've been introduced to stop excessive use of the curbs on the outside of corners. Now, they're not activated for this event this weekend, but it's interesting that Brands Hatch is trying to do something to stop drivers using excessive amount of curbing, particularly on the exit, Paddock Hill Bend, and then coming down from Druids into what is called now Graham Hill Bend.
Max Buch looked all set to go quickest there, but he had a slow final sector and as a result remained 2nd, but only 0.007 seconds slower than Sergio Jimenez up at the top. Here comes Aman Ibrahim then into the right-hander of Clearways that brings him out onto the continuing kink of Clark Curve. Across the line comes Ibrahim. Where is he currently lying? 13th. Any improvement for him? No, he remains in 13th spot in the Fortec Mercedes as he comes into Paddock Hill Bend. There's Stefan Landman, who we've seen plenty of earlier on in this session. Where is he running now? Down in 11th place. This is personal best so far for Giorgio Pantano. Now the Bitec McLaren squad had a difficult time. Look at the back end stepping out as he tries to get it sorted out.
No, that car is a handful, and you don't want a car to be behaving. Now, under braking, the back end was already beginning to dance around. He had to turn the wheel to enter into Clearways, and that only exacerbated the problem. So not an easy car. Watch again on the brakes. Watch the back of the car. There it is, moving around. Then he's struggling to keep the car on the racing line through the Clearways. But
10th position at the moment for Pantano, which is an improvement because they struggled considerably in Nogaro. Into the pits then comes Maximilian Buch. He's 2nd quickest at the moment and he seems relatively content with that time. And there is Buch coming into the pit lane. So driver 1 going out in this first session, driver 2 in the second session, then they have to allocate a driver to go out in the pole position shootout of qualifying. Here then, Roman Rusanov, and he's done a personal best in the first sector. Where is he currently? Down in 15th place, so he'd be hoping to do a personal best, I think, because he's got more pace than that as Rusanov, who's a quick little driver, the Russian, and he is 32 years of age, but plenty of experience. He was an F1 test driver for Midland F1 back in 2005. He was GT champion in the Le Mans Endurance Series in 2004. He was also 3rd in Formula Parma Audi back in 2002. So he's actually probably one of the drivers who has experience of this Grand Prix circuit.
He may well do. Certainly he's got experience at Brands Hatch, but getting onto the Grand Prix circuit is a bit of a treat these days. Certainly in a motor racing context, it is used quite a lot for corporate days and for motor club days. But we don't see probably enough racing on the Grand Prix circuit. But of course it's a high maintenance responsibility for MSV, who are the owners and operators here at Brands Hatch and other circuits throughout the UK.
So there's Aman Ibrahim. He hasn't gone particularly well in the first sector, but I think he's one of the only men left out on the circuit as he comes into the left-hander. He's got Daniel Lloyd behind him, but again, Lloyd hasn't gone quick either, so I think we're pretty much reaching the crescendo of this session. The checker flag is being waved, the time has clicked to 0.
Just watching the body language of Ibrahim's Mercedes, it doesn't look as fluid as the HRT cars that we've seen Maximilian Buch and others in. I don't know what it is, whether it's a setup issue. It might have been some of that caught out Ibrahim, as we look at something going on at the back of the circuit, is somebody being off or about to go off? Or we're just getting a quick view around different parts of the circuit. There's the exit of Stirling's Bend.
Aman Ibrahim, another man actually with Grand Prix circuit experience from his time in Formula 2. He would have raced here a couple of times in his days in the single-seater category. Across the line comes Stefan Landman. Any improvement from 11th place for him?
Up to a 9th.
Up into 9th position. So decent effort from Landman. And the only real shocks inside that in that top 10 were Cesar Ramos finishing down in 11th place. A bit of drama there at the back of the 88 Lamborghini. Stefan Rosina didn't actually get out on circuit in that session. That's not too much of a disaster, because if they can get Eng out for the second session and then he makes it through to the pole shootout.
They've got the whole rear suspension of the car off, the brakes are off as well. So again, looking at that's coming through Dingledale up into Sheen Curve, and that's the reason why Ibrahim looks so uncomfortable in the car, because he's not certain what the car's going to do.
And there we can see once again the sparks coming up, the car moving around so much as again as he came through the right-hander of Sheen Curve itself.
I don't know whether Fortec, who run this car, are aware of that. Hopefully they'll get a view of this when they get back later in the evening and see. There's something, certainly to me, looks imbalanced between the front and rear of the car, maybe in the spring damping area.
So this is at right to Lamborghini, and they're checking out the wheel, and it looks as though Thomas Enger is getting in. Well, he definitely is getting in. We can see that, and hopefully we'll see that car out in the second segment of qualifying. But 3 BMWs in the top 4 positions at the end of that first session of qualifying, and it's not been very often, we can say that. Sergio Jimenez quickest for BMW Sports Trophy Team Brazil. A really strong performance from him, a 1 minute 24.575, the quickest lap we've seen of the weekend so far. Second place for the Mercedes of Maximilian Buch, and a relatively quiet run for Stefano Colombo, but he's in 3rd place in the SRO Motorsports BMW, so that's a very impressive drive as well. And Alex Zanardi in 8th place at the end of that first qualifying session. 5th place for Felipe Salaquada and Andrea Montemini, and that's nice to see as well, because they struggled a little in Nogaro, but they seem to be getting more on top of that Ferrari 458. It's a car they know very well, having campaigned it in GT Series around Europe, but making the step up to the Blancpain GT Series is something that we've seen a lot of teams struggle with, most notably Bitec there, who we saw were relatively low down the order. They've won, GT championships around Europe, but making this step up to international level GT racing is a big ask. Yeah,
I mean, certainly they're not making life easy for themselves. We've got a clear example of the McLaren behaviour, coming into clearways, under brakes, the back end beginning to dance out. Trouble is, you've got to turn right to take clearways corner, and that only just made the problem bigger for Giorgio Pantana, vastly experienced from years of single-seater racing and winning the GP2 championship, amongst other accolades. That's a car that needs a little bit of attention, as we have seen on the Fortec entered Mercedes-Benz as well.
This is the first time in 18 years that international sports car racing has come to Brands Hatch. The last time was the 1996 BPR GT Global Championship, which was organised in part by Stefan Rattel, the CEO of SRO, which organises this Blancpain GT Series. And there was one member who is racing here this weekend who was racing back in 1996. He actually won his GT2 class in a Porsche 911. Stefan Ortelli was racing the last time that international GT and sports car racing came here.
Well, he knows the track then, doesn't he?
He certainly does.
Stefan Ortelli knows every racetrack, I think, pretty much on the calendar. And, I mean, amazing. Going back, not quite 20 years, but certainly to have a career that's sustained over that time at this level is a remarkable achievement.
The race was actually won by Hans Stuck and Thierry Boutsen in a Porsche 911 GT1 that weekend.
But that car is not the kind of 911 you'd go and buy in your showroom. You could actually have bought a limited edition of it, which is a collector's item these days.
Do you regret not doing it?
You've got to be joking. I've got 2 of the best in the world.
So we're looking at the BMW Team Brazil squad there. Antonio Amanes, one of the, the main man behind the AH Competiciones entry. And it's great to see them getting back on top of back on top of things, really, because they've got Matthias Stumpf, as I said earlier, Matthias Stumpf and Valdeno Brito, who this team those two drivers with this team won the Brazilian GT Championship for 2 years. There you can see they've actually got the pit wall set up inside the garage, actually, so I wonder if they feel there's not quite enough room on the pit wall for them. But it's good for us because we can see their faces and everything. But it does, the pit wall always seems like an odd place because you can hardly see the cars as they come whizzing past you. It seems a very busy place.
The guy on the pit wall has to anticipate when you're coming because the car comes into view at the exit of Clark Curve, and it's literally, if you're at the high end or the top end of the pit lane, you really are anticipating just on the stopwatch somebody is saying he's due now, and you stick the board out.
There you can see then the cars lining up ready to go because we've got 30 seconds before the second qualifying segment begins, and basically the quickest top 10 times full stop go through to the top 10 shootout. So we'll have to wait until pretty much the start of Q3 before we find out exactly the combined times. We'll be given the Q2 combined times, but we'll see who's going through nevertheless. Some young snappers, nothing to photo on track, so they're photoing their hand, but I'm sure when the cars get out onto the circuit, it'll be, you can get some great pictures around here, and in fact lots of amateur photographers come out to Brands Hatch every weekend and place themselves at vantage points around the circuit because there's so many places you can see at the circuit.
But more critically, the spectators can get, in relative terms, by modern circuits, they still can get quite close to the corner, and therefore they don't need to carry an 800mm lens with a magnifier on it and have somebody to carry the lens for you. So it's got great opportunities for great motor racing snaps or photographs. Images maybe today because they're digital and immediately they can be transferred onto whatever you want to do.
There we can see the pit lane. We've had, what, a couple of 5 or 6 cars head out onto the circuit for the start of this second session. 7 cars we've had head out there. So the quickest time from that first session was a 1:24.575 set by Sergio Jimenez in the BMW. So let's see if that gets usurped in this second session. Alex Zanardi out again, of course.
On it, absolutely nailed it. First sector, purple Alex Zanardi.
Well, he's just heading out of the pits this time, of course, on the outlap.
You know, he's still a racer, even on the outlap.
So we'll wait and see whether Zanardi can improve from his time in the first sector. Things certainly looking better for the BMWs, as we've already touched on this weekend. And Max Buch and Max Goetz still involved there as well. The Mercedes didn't look strong in free practice. They looked a little far away, and Steph Dusseldorp was telling me that they were really struggling with understeer in the first sector, but it seems as though they must have got those problems solved at HTP. As across the line then comes Alex Zanardi in the 33 Roll BMW. Stamps on the brakes with his prosthetic leg coming into the first corner at Paddock Hill Bend, controlling the throttle with the mechanism behind his wheel. It must get a lot of getting used to, but he's been racing in this sort of in this way for a good number of years now.
But I think the challenge of Brands Hatch is probably bigger than most other racetracks. Alex Zanardi will take this BMW too, and it's the rise and fall of the circuit. It's the length of some of the corners here going into Surtees. It's a late apex. That's just about there. You saw Zanardi made the apex, so you're almost out of the corner before you even see the apex. Then flat out down the hill. Hawthorne Bend itself, probably maybe down 2 gears, certainly if not just 1 gear. Then on the brakes again through Westfield. Again, a corner that you can carry a lot more speed through. Then the dip in Dingledale, then the blind approach up to Sheen Curve. You can't see the apex. Then all of a sudden you're out of that and into Stirling.
So Zanardi, he's going very wide there, keeps it all on the...
Never lifted, never lifted.
But he did well to, he drove straight on the grass as well, didn't he? And gently eased himself back on. You try and throw yourself back on, you'll end up in the wall like Philip Frommenweiler did this morning.
Yeah, but the main thing, if you do what Alex did, and a 1:24.9 for his, that would have been a quicker lap.
I was going to say, that's not bad considering he went off the circuit here.
Yeah, and I just watched, everything looks pretty normal in the middle of the corner. just runs the curb a little bit too much, then the bottom of the car actually bottoms out on the curb, but keeps it straight, which is the key.
Marcus Winkelhock, the quickest man in this session so far, 1 minute 24.728, but we've only had 6 people set lap times. This man across the line is the 28 car of Jeroen Bleekemolen, the man who took pole position in Nogaro for the opening race of the season. He and Harry Proschek had a bit of trouble in the race, so couldn't quite capitalise on the Lamborghini's pace. But Bleekemolen going 4th quickest, then with his first lap out there.
Yeah, just David Fuminelli and the BMW starting with Colombo, 2nd quickest. So sort of names are popping up, and car combinations that certainly in Nogaro weren't so near to the front.
There is Marcus Winkelhock out on the circuit now, the 2012 FIA GT1 World Champion. He's driving alongside Nicky Melnoff, and again, that opening, formation lap incident in Nogaro where Melnoff hit the back of the pole sitter really ruined what was a good weekend and a strong potential weekend. Look at that all over the place, Winkelhock, as he tries to get the car stopped for clearways.
Again, on the brakes, turning, the back end didn't like it, stepped out, had to get under the throttle correction, then back on it again. Zanardi, quickest 124.525. Winkelhock lost certainly at least a 1/10 of a second. Watch again as he comes in, we just got onto it.
But yeah, as you say, Alex Zanardi, in fact, it's a Roll Motorsport 1-2 at the moment. Zanardi quickest, Fuminelli 2nd quickest. So really looking strong for the BMWs this weekend. Across the line comes Jeroen Bleekemolen. Any improvement from him as he takes the line? He goes up into 4th place with a 1 minute 24.660, but there's only a 1/10 and a half covering the top 4 here. This is going to be really, really closely fought as Bleekemolen comes up into Druids. We look back at Laurens Vanthoor now out on circuit, defending champion from 2013.
Just watch how aggressive Vanthoor is. He was using the circuit, the curb, the grass this morning. More control, particularly coming out of Stirling's, doesn't run the curb. You don't really want to get on that curb because it can drag you off to the right or spit you into the left. Vanthoor already through clearways, now coming through Clark Curve. Laurens Vanthoor, Audi number 1. Will he be quickest?
Across the line he comes, it looks good, and it is a 1 minute 24.307 for Laurens Vanthoor. Quickest time of the weekend so far. This is going to be a thrilling qualifying session. Pierre Dudonné nearest towards us, Vincent Voss just turning around. They are the main men in charge of WRT, and here comes the second into the pits, WRT.
Yeah, René Rast decides to pull it off. Just under 9 minutes of the session remaining. That was a strong lap. What was important was it was neat coming out of Stirling's bend. He stayed way off the curb, got the drive, and then quickly into clearways, and again a good run off and through the start-finish line.
Here is Caca Bueno through the right-hander at the top of the hill, and then into the left-hander of Stirling's. This Brazilian is a 5 times Brazilian stock car champion. The 38-year-old is also a very successful GT racer in Brazil, but as we've said before, the BMW squad yet to get to grips with GT racing here in Europe, but they're getting better as he winds into the pits.
Audi coming, well, we're just watching the Mercedes just to see whether Vanthoor could go any quicker or not. In fact, that wasn't Vanthoor, it was another Audi. So as we look back,
Max Goetz, this is into clearways then, and he's yet to set a representative lap time, so let's see what he can do. An average middle sector, so I don't think it's going to set the world alight, this Maxi Goetz. In fact, it's going to be in the 26s, a 1 minute 26.736. Across the line goes Vanthoor. Does he improve that time? No, he doesn't.
Seconds, over a second slower, but what he might well be doing is doing one hard lap, one slow lap, one quick lap again.
Into clearways then comes the number 5 car of Marc Basseng, and he's going to pull into the pits as well, currently lying where is Basseng? Down in 11th place, in the Pro-Am category. Most of the guys running in the Pro Cup and counting for overall honours. Car 2 time has been deleted because they improved while not respecting the track limits at Paddock Hill Bend, and so that is a deletion of the time for René Rast, because whilst, as you mentioned earlier, these pressure pads are not, it's not being as strict as if it were a British club race, for example. Obviously, the stewards here aren't going to let the cars run everywhere and all over.
I mean, again, watching this morning, as the cars came through Graham Hill Bend, that's the old bottom bend at Brands Hatch. Notably, Laurens Vanthoor and René Rast were running way, way wide to such a degree that they had all 4 wheels off the track. And that's the reason why René Rast has been penalised with a time being deleted for just using too much of what would be runoff, not racetrack.
On board with Max Goetz as he comes towards the line. Decent sectors so far. I don't think it'll put him quickest at all. It'll put him in 8th place, 1 minute 24.932, so still slower than his teammate Maximilian Buch. There you really saw the drop coming through the right-hander, but here's Andrea Montemini through Dingledell out on the circuit. This is going to be a car to watch, the Vauban Corsa. Ferrari 458 comes into the left-hander of Sterling's now. Montemini, the former Formula One racer, back in the sort of mid-90s really. He had some races with Pacific, 4 races with 40 in 1996. He was actually the Benetton test driver in 1993. F1 career never really took off, but his GT career certainly is as he comes across the line. This is going to be a good time, third quickest.
And having said all that, he's a very nice guy to boot.
No, well, that's the most important thing. Into the final corner now comes Sergei Afanasiev. Are we going to see an improvement from him? He's done a personal best in the first sector, but a 24.3 is a tough time to topple as he comes across the line, and it's 10th place.
Well, it's an improvement, but it's competitive. The top 10 are covered by 0.69 of a second.
This is really exciting, isn't it?
That's very good. You go out and do your time, you think you've done a good job. By the time you get back to the pitch, you've been dropped by about a further 3 or 4 places.
Here comes Max Goetz. Personal bests in sectors 1 and 2. This could well move him up into the top 5 if he gets it all together. There he is, working the wheels across, and he comes across the line to go into 2nd place, a 1 minute 24.332.
I mean, that sort of slipped by. We just caught that lap at the tail of the lap, but Maximilian Goetz done a strong job. So really, for the first time this weekend, we're seeing the Mercedes SLS perform at a performance level that they would be, I think, right now pretty happy with.
René Rast out on circuit. The fast German has had his first time deleted for exceeding the track limits at Paddock Hill Bend, so he's got to do it all over again with 4.5 minutes to go if he wants to get into the top 10 of the top 10 shootout that will go through to battle for pole position. And look at that, he's looking very quick as he comes into the final corner. His teammate Laurens Vanthoor is quickest so far. It's also smooth and neat through clearways. We've seen cars throwing their back ends around. Rast keeps it under control. Is this going to give him the quickest time of the session so far?
Yes.
Yes, it is, a 1 minute 24.189.
And do you know why he was quick?
No.
He was neat, tidy, using all the energy positively, not riding the curves, not being over-aggressive with the throttle or the steering wheel. And the time now, he's got just over a 1/10 of a second advantage over his teammate Vanthoor in the sister car. This is
Roman Rusinov,
yes.
currently down in 13th place. He's done a personal best in sector 1, which is a decent first sector. It has to get on the brakes, I think, a little bit there as he came up behind the Brazilian BMW car, because he's done an average middle sector, so I don't think this is going to set the world alight Rusinov, but it might get him up into the top 10 in this particular session of qualifying. Here he comes across the line. Where's this going to put him? Up into 13th place. So he remains in 13th place, I should say. And my apologies, it's Stefan Otelli at the wheel, not Roman Rusinov. Rusinov did the first session.
Yeah, it's unusual for Otelli to be that far behind, particularly his 2 Audi, let's call them teammates, René Rast and Laurens Vanthoor. And then the best of the rest is still Maximilian Goetz in the Mercedes, joined by in the second row of the grid, if that's going to be the grid, Alex Zanardi in the lead BMW.
Sten Pentus, the only Estonian in the field, is coming down towards clearways. We've got 17 nationalities represented this weekend in only 39 drivers, a really eclectic mix of nationalities across the Blancpain Sprint field, and this Estonian is going to put himself in 15th place, so he does improve, but still hanging around the lower reaches. In fact, it's 15th and 16th for the 2 Bitech McLarens at the moment. Only Miguel Torrell and Sasha Halleck have gone slower. Thomas Enger has been out and done a first and second sector, but that's all, and then he came back into the pits. So
whatever their problems are, they're not going to get through to Q3, and that's a disappointment, because that was a quick car here this morning. Well, they were working around the left rear suspension, they had the whole brake assembly off the car. I don't know what they were doing to the back of the car, but clearly they haven't managed to get it rectified.
Here comes Valdino Brito then, across the line he comes, and he goes 4th, quickest, very impressive.
Good run.
He's been racing in Brazilian stock car since 2004. He did 2 races in the Porsche Super Cup in 2009, but his main racing has been in the Brazilian Stock Car Championship, which he's leading this season.
I tell you, if he keeps doing a job like that, maybe Nelson Piquet Jr. won't be needed.
Quickest of anyone goes Markus Winkelhock in the Phoenix Racing Audi. Great lap from the German, and he does a 1:24.156.
Well, the lap will stand, but certainly he ran extremely wide on the edge of the Pinnacle Bend. The lap that he's on now may well be in question. But part of the reason why Markus Winkelhock has been so good in this, the second of the three practice of the qualifying sessions, is he actually rented a Radical.
Yeah.
And he ran here on Wednesday because he didn't know the circuit, so he went, paid his own hard-earned cash, bought a Radical for the day, and just pounded around. Of course, the Radical's a totally different car, but it gave him a sense of where the track goes, the nature of the circuit, the ups, the downs, the bumps, where you get to, and whatever. The
HDP team did it as well, but in a Fiat 500, which I imagine was a little different. Across the line then, and into 5th place goes David Fuminelli in the SRO Motorsports BMW. Zanardi down in 7th, his teammate. Here comes Ortelli. Are we going to see an improvement from him? Currently 14th overall. This could move him up towards the top 10. Across the line he goes, and it is 10th place.
Surprise. I do not understand. Stefano Ortelli normally can get a time out of an Audi as much as anybody else in the team. Winkelhock, Raz, Van Thor, but he's the one that's dropping behind. He's down in 10th, the other three are top 3.
And he's currently second in the championship, Ortelli, after his strong opening weekend in Nogaro. There is René Rast sitting at the wheel. He seems confident, and well, he might be, that he's going to go through to the third segment of qualifying. Sergei Afanasiev still out there pushing. 13th position for him at the moment. And, well, his teammate Maximilian Goetz is there in 4th place. Well, Goetz has done a 24.3, Afanasiev has done a 25.0. So 0.7 of a second slower, and he's not going any better this time around. So Afanasiev doesn't look like he's going to take himself and Steph Dusseldorp through into the top 10 shootout. Stays in 13th place for Afanasiev.
Doesn't really look like he's sufficiently comfortable to commit. And you can notice that coming into clearways and then through Clark Curve. He's always sort of, in a sense, waiting until he feels confident to open the throttle, and that's where the time will be lost.
Mark Basseng, 0.8 of a second slower than his teammate Markus Winkelhock. Winkelhock's at the top of the standings, Basseng's in 11th. This has been a reasonably average lap so far. I don't know if this will be enough to get Basseng up into the top 10. Across the line he comes, 11th place for the German. He's going to be a frustrated man, I think.
Ortelli and Basseng, sister cars, strange, while both of them are struggling. Well, top 10 for Ortelli, but Mark Basseng just outside.
Alex Zanardi with a personal best in Sector 1. He's currently in 6th place, so I think he'll be going through to the top 10 shootout. He's going to throw it through the final corner at Clearways nevertheless and come across the line to try and improve on his 24.358. Across the line he comes, but it isn't an improvement. He remains in 6th place. I think that'll be good enough to see him through to the the final qualifying segment. But here comes Afanasiev. Well, he's taken the checker flag, Afanasiev, so there's nothing he can do. His qualifying session is over. He'll come into the pits at the end of this lap as he turns through clearways. And disappointment for the Pro-Am champion from last season. And there's René Rast. Second quickest man then. And he is going to finish in 2nd place there. And now it's all down to the combined results, basically, of the first and second qualifying segments, and that'll give us the top 10 cars that will go through to the pole position shootout, which will be a 10-minute blast. And interestingly, in the pole position shootout, once you've set your fastest time, if you then come into the pits, your time then gets annulled. You have to do your time and then go straight to Parc Fermé to avoid everyone queuing up in the pits to the last possible moment and extending the session by another 5 minutes as everyone then decides to go out right at the end. So
I wouldn't agree to do that.
No?
I would do what I want to do.
Okay, and then you'd be disqualified.
I'll take it on the chin.
So the cars making their way back into the pit lane now then. And well, a very entertaining qualifying session and a very close qualifying session as well, because even in that well, here we go, let's have a look at it. And the Phoenix Audi was the quickest out there, with Markus Winkelhock at the wheel, just fractionally quicker. But look at the top 12 cars in this graphic, separated by 0.7 of a second.
Top 14 covered by less than a second.
Really incredibly close here at Brands Hatch, because it's not exactly a short lap either. A minute 24 in in a GT car is a reasonably length of a lap. René Rast, second quickest man, then Van Thor, third quickest. Max Buch and Max Goetz, championship leaders and defending Blancpain Endurance Series champions, pretty much, because Buch won the championship, Goetz was second in the championship, so they're effectively champions together. Colombo and Fuminelli fifth, Alex Zanardi in sixth place, so SRO Motorsport getting the edge over the Brazilians for the time being. Salaquada and Montemini there as well. And then we saw also going through to the top 10 shootout will be Jimenez and Bueno, and also making it through I think will be Jeroen Bleekemolen, which is good to see. But two McLarens in 16th and 17th places, that's going to be really, really frustrating for the Bitec squad, who, as I say, won the with Giorgio Pantano, won a GT championship in Europe last season, but coming here, it's a different story.
They've got a competitive car, but it's a bit like Morecambe and Wise playing a piece of music. It was the notes were in the wrong place. It wasn't the way it was being played. So basically, there's something in the mix of the McLaren which is consistent with both cars. They've just not got the setup. And we did see how Panton has struggled in qualifying one into clearways, the back end of the car under braking and then turning in. Just again, this thing of lack of confidence. And Brands is a racetrack where you have to have that confidence, because if you don't, you cannot commit to the corners, and therefore your lap time is not going to be.
So the sun has been sort of out all day here at Brands Hatch, but we've had plenty of cloud cover as we get ready for the final 10 minutes of qualifying to get underway in a few moments' time here. And the top 10 cars will go out on circuit. Quickest man will start on pole position for the qualifying race, which comes up tomorrow. The race starts at 10:30 local time, so we come on air at 10:15 local time, which is GMT +1 at the moment. And there you can see a couple of the snappers out in the woods, getting ready to get some brilliant pictures of these GT cars as they rocket through. And then the main race tomorrow, which is the one that has the majority of the points counting for the championship, gets underway at 2:45, I think it is, tomorrow afternoon, on air at 2:30. So make sure you join us for all that action here from Brands Hatch, and what action it's going to be, because there is nothing, well, there's not much better than a field of GT cars roaring down to Paddock Hill Bend.
Well, if you've got 14 cars currently within a second, you're going to very competitive motor racing. And for everybody who's here this weekend, with the odd exception, first time. So one thing going out and doing your laps and qualifying and running a clean, clear lap. Totally different thing when you're fighting to pass somebody, and at the same time you're also being challenged from the rear. We saw a lot of that in Nagaro. There was opportunities to pass, particularly at the end of the straight at Nagaro. Here you've got to think about it a lot more deeply, because you've got to use your advantages, particularly off corners, to give you that slingshot. There's not going to be an awful lot of diving up the inside, with the exception of going into Druids, the hairpin bend just after Paddock Hill. So everybody's going to have to think about, how can I get the momentum, and that will come from being quick off a corner. And
there's nowhere on this circuit that you can get away with a mistake, apart from maybe down here at Graham Hill Bend or the exit of Druids. Every other corner, if you make a mistake there, you're going to be in a gravel trap, or, well, in a gravel trap.
I mean, I think that driving errors, to say they should be penalised or punished, I don't know how you want to phrase it, but we've seen on so many circuits around the world where you've got a mile of runoff, and it therefore just, I believe, breeds poor driving standards, quality. Here at Brands, you've got a reality check. You make a small mistake, it'll have big consequences. You might just run off track, you might eventually hit something, but it instills a different ethos in a driver than where you've got these wide open spaces.
The prancing horse at the wheel of the number 90 Valour Corsa car that will be piloted in this final session by Andrea Montemini.
Yeah, and I think Andrea Montemini was saying this car is actually handling better than the Formula One car is, so it gives you an indication as to where events are.
Yep, and he was driving a 40 though back in the day, and a Pacific. So
I remember when he had a massive accident in Barcelona coming onto the pit straight, and that was before that sort of, what you call it, chicane or whatever it is, sissy chicane.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was a big old accident. I was in the commentary booth, and the commentary booth reverberated with it.
Really?
Anyway, he was mildly injured, but nothing too severe, and here he is, smiling as ever.
Qualifying 3 gets underway here at Brands Hatch. It's the top 10 shootout, and the first man out to shoot into that top 10 is Jeroen Bleekemolen in the number 28 Gottfried Grasser team Lamborghini, or Grasser Racing Team I think it is, Lamborghini. Bleekemolen, as I've said before, put it on pole for the race in Nogaro as he drops down the hill and turns through the left-hander. The Lamborghinis looking really strong here at Brands, as are a number of the brands here at Brands. And there you can see the funky artwork which is on the front of Stefan Landman and Sasha Halleck's car, which is helpful to me because that's one of the only distinguishing features between the two machines. And so far, Bleekemolen is the only man to head out there onto the circuit. 10 minutes, a long time, of course.
Well, I think what we're going to see is probably a number of drivers' team combinations holding back, and they're going to go out an out lap, a hot lap, and in, and that's going to be it. They're not going to try and do more than that. They'll probably keep the best of the tires they have for this 10-minute qualifying session. Just waiting to see more cars come on to the racetrack. I think some of the Brazil BMWs making their way out as we keep an eye on the Lamborghini still on its out lap. And it's always this balance, just you see a little bit of weaving as he comes through Sterling's Bend. The balance is to try and get the temperature up, but not to overheat the tire, especially if it is a fresh set of tires. So now, this is going to be their opportunity to get the best out of the Lamborghini. One lap and one lap only, I would imagine.
The sun is poking its way through the clouds here at Brands Hatches. Evening descends on the Kent circuit, and Jeroen Bleekemolen turns through Paddock Hill Bend for the first time in his attempt to claim his second pole position in as many races. Through the hairpin at Druids, which is still a relatively quick corner as far as hairpins go. Compare it to the hairpin at Nogaro, for example, in the opening race of the season. It's a very wide hairpin, as it were.
Well, it's quite a long hairpin. It doesn't have that very tight apex. You can almost use any line entering or exiting because it's one of those very long corners. Again, it's a banked hairpin bend. So the key is not overrunning the exit, getting onto the curb on the outside. That can cause all kinds of problems. As Bleekemolen makes his way through Hawthorne Corner, one of the big corners around the back of the Grand Prix circuit, then into Westfield. Then you drop down, and again, it's the climb up Dingledale into Sheen Curve, changing gear on the exit of Sheen Curve. Bleekemolen then on the brakes.
Ooh.
You know, that's what you've got to try and avoid. Too much curb unsettles the back of the car. Didn't really slow him down though, I think, very much. He might just have gotten away with it. But that's how fine the limit at Brands, and particularly on the exit of Sterling's, can be. So
what's this lap time going to be for Jeroen Bleekemolen? Across the line he comes, it's looking good, a 1 minute 24.282. That'll put him in the mix, I'd say. We have seen quicker times, but not much quicker. So the two-time Porsche Super Cup champion is now at the top of the times here. Winner of the Nürburgring 24-hour race last season as well, Jeroen Bleekemolen.
Let's see whether he goes for another timed lap. We wait to see the sector times coming up on our timing and scoring screens. Jeroen Bleekemolen within a tenth of a second of the fastest time we saw in the second qualifying segment. Still nothing coming up indicating whether he's on another hot lap.
Sergio Jimenez flashing past one of the it was the Ferrari, it was the Vauban Corsa Ferrari of Andrea Montemini. Then he comes launching out of the left-hander and up the hill, and now you can see the beautiful colour that the sky is going here as we go on board with Jimenez.
And he's making his way through as a Pilgrim's drop up Hawthorne Hill through Hawthorne Curve, then on the brakes into Westfield. I could tell because I recognised that tree just to the left of where the driver's gone past. It was an ash tree.
Okay. Into the left-hander of Sterling's now, and it's personal bests for Jimenez, but he's half a second or so down on Jeroen Bleekemolen at the moment. Up into second place has gone the number 30 BMW of Valdeno Brito, so that's a good lap time from him, but he's about 0.7 of a second slower than Bleekemolen. So Bleekemolen really setting the pace so far.
Bleekemolen 1:23.96. He did his second timed lap. Proved I was right about only one lap and then into the pits. First driver to break into the 1 minute 23s, and that's a dominant run.
Brilliant lap from Jeroen Bleekemolen then to go fastest of anyone. The fastest lap we've seen all weekend, but here with a personal best in the middle sector is Maximilian Goetz. Into the right-hander he comes. He and Max Buch are leading the championship at the moment. Can they squeak into the 1 minute 23s. Across the line he comes. Yes, he can. A 1 minute 23.894. A tenth of a second quicker than your own Blancpain. But now out on circuit is defending champion Laurens Vanthoor in the number 1 WRT Audi. Into the left-hander of Sterling's. He's done a personal best in Sector 1, a personal best in Sector 2. At the moment he's a couple of tenths down and he's all over the shop.
Yeah, he's this lap, it'll be a good lap, but it's not going to be good enough to take either first or second position from what I've seen. So Laurens Vanthoor trying to compensate in that third sector. Had a messy exit under Sterling, so Laurens Vanthoor, where does he go? He goes third quickest, 1:24.001. He's only a tenth of a second slower than Maximilian Götz, currently in that pole position provisionally.
Across the line then comes Blancpain, and he doesn't improve that time around. And but he does a 24.1, so he still would have gone third quickest with that time, but he's currently in second spot. Into the final corner comes René Rast then, another phenomenally quick driver that we've got here in the Blancpain GT Sprint Series, vying for pole position for the races here at Brands Hatch this weekend. Is it good enough for Rast? No, it's not, only 6th, so something must have gone amiss in that final sector. Next up to cross the line is David Fuminelli, currently in 10th spot, but he hasn't done a representative lap time so far. Here he comes. Can he challenge the top 5? He's going to go 8th quickest, so not quite as of yet.
So the fizz of the BMW performance seems to have just vanished in this final segment of qualifying for the first race tomorrow morning. We've got Mercedes, Lamborghini, Audi, BMW, 4 different manufacturers in the top 4 places.
Here comes Marcus Finkelhock, very quick in his second segment of qualifying. Is he able to challenge the front runners? Personal best in sectors 1 and 2. It's only good enough for 4th place though. Still doing a 1 minute 24.1. 2/10 of a second separating the top 4. That's running wide there. That's going to be a bit of a worrying moment for Vanthoor. And that again will not be quite the lap time he would have wanted. 3rd place for him. But again, just if he can get rid of these errors, he's in there.
We had fastest sector in the first sector on that last lap. They didn't do anything in the second and third sector, so if he can string together all the sectors collectively, not individually, he's back in the races.
Alex Zanardi crosses the line to go 6th quickest, a 1 minute 24.377. Here comes René Rast. This is relentless. We haven't seen any other part of the circuit than the finishing line because these quick drivers keep coming across the line to try and go quicker. Rast isn't going to though because he's down in 9th place. He had a slow middle sector that time around. Can't seem to tie it up altogether. Vanthoor was quickest of anyone in that first sector before he went off at the final corner. This is absolutely frantic action with 2 minutes to go here at Brands Hatch. At the moment, Max Götz has the quickest time of anyone, a 1 minute 23.887. But will that all change in the remaining 2 minutes? Here's Vanthoor, a decent first sector. Actually, no, it's terrible. It's 4 seconds off the pace. My apologies.
Well, that was a good spot. Anyway, we're looking at...
That was Enzo Eid briefly, but now it's Alex Zanardi, currently 6th. And he's backed off in the first sector as well.
Not showing anything at all, so whether Alex has had the best of his tyres on this run, only a minute and a half of the session remaining, he will have time to get back across the start-finish line and maybe get one more lap if he feels he's got the performance in those Pirelli tyres. Otherwise, it's going to be a 6th place start for Alex Zanardi in the BMW.
No one out there improving at the moment. Oh, that's wide for René Rast in the background, wasn't it? He keeps it all together by the looks of things. Jeroen Bleekemolen gets out of his way, but Rast isn't going to go faster on that one. At the moment, it's Max Götz in the HDP Mercedes quickest. 2nd quickest for Jeroen Bleekemolen in the Lamborghini. 3rd quickest for Laurens Vanthoor in the Audi. 4th quickest is Marcus Winkelhock in the Phoenix Audi. 5th quickest is Valdino Brito in the BMW Team Brazil car, but Brito pulls into the pits. His session is over.
And René Rast stays 9th place. Last lap, 1:26.4, and that's what the best part of almost 2 seconds slower than his previous fastest lap.
But this is it. It's do or die now as the cars come across the line to start what will be their final lap of their qualifying runs. 10th place still for Fuminelli. Not really improving at all on that final lap. Here is Marcus Winkelhock, a personal best in the middle sector, a decent first sector, so this could move Winkelhock up into the top 3 if he can hook up this final corner. Into clearways he comes, keeps it all together, very neat and tidy. What's this going to do for Marcus Winkelhock? The German comes across the line in the Phoenix Audi. Is it an improvement? No, it's not.
He needed to find just over a 10th of a second to gain that 5th position. Or sorry, I beg your pardon, in this case 4th position. So disappointment, and the flag is out.
This could be good from Vanthor, currently third quickest across the line. He comes and he takes provisional pole position. 1 minute 23.865, just 22 hundredths of a second quicker than Max Coates. Brilliant lap from Vanthor. Zanardi still out there on the circuit. Across the line he comes. Can he improve? No, he remains in 6th position. But who else is out there setting good lap times? Here's René Rast out of the final corner. Personal best in Sector 1. Average Sector 2. Can he launch himself towards the top 5? No. 8th place for René Rast. Frustration for him. Bleekemolen crosses the line. He'll start 3rd at best tomorrow. Max Coates is still out there, but he's not bothering because he's finished his run by the looks of things. Here comes Fuminelli. Any improvement from him? Doesn't look like it as he comes across the line. He remains in 10th position. It looks as though Laurens Vanthor, with a last-ditch lap, has secured pole position for tomorrow's racing here at Brands Hatch.
Authentic action. The last 10 minutes have been about as competitive a qualifying as I've seen for a very long time. 0.9 of a second covering the top 10 drivers, and I thought it was going to be a one lap only, but what happened was everybody went out and they just ran. They may have done a quick lap, slow lap, quick lap, slow lap, but they stayed out and they thought that was where they would gain the most time. But Laurens Vanthor ultimately managed to string together 3 sectors. He got the fastest sector time in Sector 3, personal best Sector 2, and that was good enough to put the Audi by only 22 thousandths of a second into pole position.
Absolutely brilliant lap from Laurens Vanthor, and I'm out of breath just from the qualifying session, so let alone...
I never got a word in.
I'm back. Vanthor then taking pole position. Smiles all around in the WRT garage. High fives there with Cesar Ramos, who's Vanthor's Brazilian teammate. Those two will start on pole position for the qualification race coming up at 10:30 on Sunday morning here at Brands Hatch. A beautiful way to start the morning, and a beautiful way to start the competitive action here at Brands. Vincent Voss going around, shaking the hands left, right and centre. Max Coates will line up alongside. Let's have a look at the results actually. Audi team, WRT, quickest of anyone. Laurens Vanthor taking pole position. Alongside him on the front row will be Max Coates, the German, for HTP Motorsport, the championship leaders. 3rd for Jeroen Bleekemolen, so he's had a 1st and a 3rd in qualification so far this season. Stunning driver, Jeroen Bleekemolen, and again, really impressive. But look how close it is. Half a second between the top 9 cars. That is one of the closest Blancpain Sprint Series qualifications that I have seen in the last years.
And it's on one of the most thoroughly enjoyable racetracks, but also very demanding racetracks. So everybody is up their game, I believe. And I think part of it is they've come to Brands Hatch. And if you're a racing driver and you race on a circuit of this quality, you're going to say, I'm going to enjoy myself.
Brilliant to see Alex Zanardi there as well in 6th place. Won 2 Paralympic gold medals here. That story will never get old. 2 Paralympic gold medals here. And he's now qualified in 6th place. So looking back at that frantic action, absolutely superb entertainment from the Blancpain GT Sprint Series. And Alex Zanardi was a real one to watch, but Laurens Vanthor stealing it in the final moments. Zaman Ibrahim had a little bit of a moment. He was lucky to keep it out of the gravel. We saw a lot of cars really struggling with the back end at this fast-paced Brands Hatch circuit. It's all fast corners, and car control is really tested here.
Very much so, but it's also about car setup, and if you haven't got the car setup to the level that you need, you'll get punished at Brands. It's a circuit that's magnificent when it's all working properly, but if it's not, it's a demanding racetrack.
Alex Zanardi then coming through the left-hander. He got a little bit out of shape as well, but he kept it fully on the throttle as he came out of Sterling's Bend. But what a superb performance from Laurens Vanthor. René Rast will be frustrated, I think. Only 8th quickest for Rast. He will start a long way down then on the grid tomorrow, a long way further down than he would have wanted. A bit of gravel in the tyres of René Rast's car as well. Jeroen Bleekemolen, a superb performance from him. He will start in 3rd place despite that Larry moment. 2nd place will be the 84 Mercedes of Maximilian Buch, and Maximilian Goetz, our championship leaders, will be on the front row coming down towards the first corner. But Laurens Vanthor, stormer of a lap, wasn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, he drove the wheels off his Audi. He got it together in that final closing minute of qualifying. Prior to that, been very entertaining.
We go on air at 10:15 local time tomorrow morning, Sunday, for the qualifying race. Make sure you join us for it because it's going to be absolutely storming. Lawrence Vanthoor will be on pole position. The second round of the Blancpain GT Series coming up live tomorrow from Brands Hatch.